Hey, Kevin, welcome to Founder Journeys. Great to have you here. I really found what you're doing super interesting, and I think everybody here should understand what an important problem that you're tackling. So, whoever comes on as a guest does their own intro to the world. So, you're up.
Thank you so much for having me, Sanjeev, and very exciting to have like this chat with you. So my name is Kevin. I'm originally French, but I lived in Singapore the major part of my life. I was a strategy consultant in healthcare and then launched a few startups. And 9 months ago, I detected that I carry a gene called APOE4. So for those of you who don't know what APOE4 is, it's basically called the Alzheimer's gene, but it's actually deeper than that, and it dramatically increases your risk of getting Alzheimer's by up to 33x. So when you discover this type of, let's say, diagnosis, it's usually life-shattering, and I decided to build in the space to solve this problem, to solve Alzheimer's for APOE4 carriers.
So, let's start with your whole story, right? Meaning, how did you? Nobody ever thinks that they may have this gene, or they may have a debilitating ailment that can come up later in life. So you're never thinking about it, especially someone as young as you at that point in time. You're absolutely not thinking about it. So how did this happen?
Yeah, so I was actually on a longevity journey altogether. So starting to eat healthy and looking at, like my vitamin absorption, what I should supplement with. And part of that journey is to do a genome sequencing, because that's when you can do a little bit more personalized medicine, know what you should take and supplement, how you should exercise. So you actually get a lot of insights there. So I didn't expect anything out of it. And when I received my result, I got these huge red flags happening saying that I carry these two APOE4. Actually, I've heard about this from a book like Outlive from Peter Attia before doing all this gene testing. And I thought in my head, because he talked about this specific gene, I thought in my head, oh, that sucks to have that thing. But it's quite rare to have two of them. So 2% of the population carries two alleles and 25% of the population carries one. So not that rare to have one, but very rare to have two. And I happen to have two.
So technically, you were nerding out in this space, and then you just realized that you just that you have these markers.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I
Oh
was
man.
looking out for a few things because you can also detect a lot of, predisposition for cancer. You can detect a few rare diseases. So I believe like knowledge is power overall. So getting that information means you can actually act on it afterwards, right? So I sincerely like urge everyone who is listening to do this whole genome sequencing whenever possible, because the price is very low now. Technology has evolved, and you do it once, right? And then you get that information.
Okay. We'll come around to the ways of doing the testing later on. But first up, I'm wondering the moment you realize this, or you get your results, what goes through your mind?
That was like terrible. I felt like, so okay, to put a bit of context, once I started this longevity journey, I sincerely believe I would at least live until 120, if not 160 years old. So to put things into context, because people usually say, so Alzheimer's only happen at 65. The good thing is your brain compensates a lot before this moment where it's a cliff down. So it's not a progressive, debilitating, where you start losing your memory progressively. It's really a cliff down. So when people say, 65, usually the first reaction is, but like, how old do you want to live? Maybe you would have lived until 75. It's only 10 years. It's okay. But put things into context, I really believe that at our age, with the current evolution of science and technology, we'll probably be able to live until 120 and much longer if we optimize things, right? So now when you say 65 out of a time of 160, then it becomes a much harder hit than 65 out of 75. I was working like very hard at that point in time, and I think it shattered everything because it felt like whatever I was doing was useless and didn't make any sense. Like, it didn't make sense to try to, build a unicorn or try to have impact in the world or even try to make memories when you know you're going to lose it all a few years down the road. So it really changed the whole perspective. And I was always on the whole mortality thing, trying to understand your own mortality and remember that you are not eternal. But that was a much, much harder hit that happened.
Okay. But do you think you're the exception to the rule here? Because most people think about, okay, 80, 90 is a good life kind of a thing. I'm just, again, this is complete hypothesis, right? I have no clue about what really everyone's thinking. But and on average, when you look around you, you think, okay, you're seeing the previous generation age gracefully, for example, and then they're okay, they're content. Um, is there more of a mind shift in terms of living longer, because longevity has become a thing, and I know in Silicon Valley it's a very big thing. You have certain proponents of the whole concept, and there's much more obsession over these markers and tracking everything with regard to your own health and stuff. It's a new trend, but is this something that you see as a mass market thing where everybody is worried about this?
Um, Let me take a few steps back because yes, you have this um, understanding that we might be able to reach like escape velocity, like longevity escape velocity, which is defined as managing to extend by more than 1 day every day your life, which is what we're aiming for because we're never aiming for extending by 30 years like in one go, right? You're aiming for like slowly extending it. But I want to jump back on what you mentioned, like which is aging gracefully. So on this specific aspect, the problem is you don't age gracefully if you get Alzheimer's, right? So I've worked in a clinical setting in hospitals. I've done my residency in the geriatric unit, and what you realize is it's definitely not like in the Notebook where you have Ryan Gosling and so on, where it's like very nice and you just like remember from time to time it's very romantic. It's not. What happens in real life is when you're a patient with Alzheimer's, your like all your loved ones end up resenting you and just hoping that you'll die. That's kind of the situation what happens because you get dementia, you can't control your mood, you can become violent or erratic, you can start like scaring everyone. And that vibe on the whole family is extremely difficult. So it's losing a few years, but the last few years of your life ends up being atrocious, not only for you. I mean, for you, maybe not because you don't remember, right? But for all your loved ones. And you know what they say, right? The impression of someone, it's usually the first impression and the last impression, right? So if your last 10 years are horrible, I think the memory that you leave behind you is also not that great. So you have that aspect. And then going back to your question on, is it mass market? Definitely not. I like coming out of France, and I was there like a few months. When I talk about like living at your 120, 160, people think it's like crazy, right? But the same way as people would think it was crazy, let's say 20 years ago, that now you would be able to chat with an AI and get all your answers and just type in natural language, right? The same way as people would think it would be crazy to have drones that can do transportation in the city or even like autonomous vehicles. So I believe this acceleration of technology is hard to comprehend. Is there, but yeah, definitely not mass market in terms of living longer.
Yeah. No, my question was more towards how, so everything that we're doing from in terms of innovation is at some point defined by need, human need, right? Um, so which is where the difference is. You can have a small set of people who want to do really, really, you know, unheard of things, and then you have the larger mass of the population on the planet who are thinking about things in a very different way. Expectations are very different. uh, their life cycle is very different, if I may say, which is what I was trying to figure out, because how many people that you meet say, okay, 120 is my goal. I think realistically speaking, very few people who are, they may understand that, yeah, there is a future wherein, because obviously 200 years ago we didn't live this long, right? So it's natural, you're evolving with what's happening around you and stuff like that. So I get that, but just kind of figuring out, in the current state, when you're talking to people that live around us, how much of this is resonates with them and say, yeah, that's cool, and or we understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I actually end up like talking a lot about this topic with a lot of people, and I agree with you. And the majority of people will not think about living that long, but they want to have health span, like quality of life until the end. They don't want to have basically losing their mind for the last like 10 or 20 years, right? So
No, that I agree. That I
that's
agree.
the
In the
main that's the main
Yeah,
appeal, I'd say, to try to solve Alzheimer's rather than living long. For me, it's like both, but yeah, I
yeah.
agree with you there.
So I am pretty interested in understanding, how do you go from discovering that you have this gene and then being in a rut saying, oh man, my life is completely changing, my plans are going awry, and then saying, okay, now let me build something that's gonna help everybody around me who has the same thing. It requires a certain amount of focus, a certain amount of passion, uh, to kind of look at community at that point in time. So how does that happen?
Yeah, so initially, I didn't want to build anything. I think the main advice I got from everyone around me, and that's probably a factor of who my friends are, and they're more like French, more chill, more like living in the present moment. And then when as well, like see a psychologist, because I did a lot of bad decisions when I knew my diagnostics, lots of bad decisions. The main advice is, all right, chill, enjoy your life now. Try to reduce your stress. Try to do whatever you can in terms of lifestyle interventions and whatever, but just enjoy life now. So the initial plan for me was to half retire in Bali or Phuket, because I was living in Singapore at that point in time, and to just enjoy life. And I think that's the majority of people would decide to do that. But what happened when I started to do that is that it was horrible for me. And I enjoy Bali, I enjoy Phuket, I enjoy like these places normally, but trying to think that I want to enjoy life, it felt like I was on a train ride and I'm trying to enjoy my train ride, except I see that there's a broken bridge in front and we're going full speed towards it. And it felt so wrong to do that, because the other aspect of it is hoping that someone, somewhere, eventually or hopefully will solve my problem for me. And personally, I'm very against that. I'd rather have agency over that. Like, if I have a problem, I'll solve it myself and not hope for some miraculous event that happens. So after 3 months of really trying hard to chill, I decided to take the matter into my own hands. And there's a big problem there, because the main risk factors for Alzheimer's is age, but the second and third are stress levels and sleep. So you want to maximize your sleep and reduce your stress as much as possible. But that's completely opposite from building a startup, especially
Of
high
course.
growth. So then I have this dilemma where I'm basically literally reducing my health span and my lifespan by building something in the hope of accelerating the solution fast enough to compensate that overall reduction into my health span. So that was a very difficult decision to make, because then I'm like, oh, okay, very high chance of failure, very high chance that this leads to nothing. And on top of that, I would have not enjoyed my life going on, and I would shortened it afterwards. But afterwards, yeah, like weighing the pros and cons, like really thinking through, I felt like it was more me to do that, and decide to find like whatever solutions we could find to solve this problem. And that's why I built in the end like the Phoenix.
And once you decide to go down this path, then you become your own test subject, right? You have all your own data to work with. You're looking at what works for you, what doesn't work. You're kind of tweaking your lifestyle and figuring out how it impacts you, and then that becomes like your baseline to build from, right?
So you have several aspects, right? You have, I'd say, the plaster solution that you can put on, which are all the lifestyle interventions you can do, like better sleep, more exercise, like eating clean, like omega-3s and so on. Like you have a huge group of things that you can do for preventing cognitive decline. And that's not only for APOE4 carriers, it's for everyone. But then you realize very fast that, all right, you can only go so far with that. What is the real solution and where it's coming from? It's most definitely coming from pharma, a little bit of hope from medtech, but mainly biopharma. And then the conclusion was, all right, I want to maximize those plaster effects that I can put on, like trying to delay the progression of the disease as much as I can. But the ultimate goal is also to help pharma find the solution as fast as possible. Then the solution becomes like in these two different aspects, and that's what we're doing, basically trying on both sides.
Okay. So so step one, how do you find more people who have a similar problem? Step two, how do you make sure people are more open to testing? Because it's a scary thing for a lot of people, right? You're saying, hey, test this and you'll know if you're going to get Alzheimer's. And that's like, oh, wow, do I want to know? Uh, you know what I mean? For a lot of people, there are some people. So I'm seeing, I want to know, uh, how open are people to facing this reality that they may end up having this, disease?
That's interesting, right? Because I feel like there is like two type of people in the world. You have the type of people who would feel like it's a catalyst for change. Learning that it motivates someone to like exercise more, live better, more meaningfully, stop alcohol and so on, do all these interventions. Or you have the other type that will feel like crushed and depressed by it and they'll feel worse afterwards. And it's extremely important to know which type of person you are. And there's no problem being one or the other. Because like you definitely don't want to know if you feel like you're not going to act on it. Like a very personal thing that happened to me when I discovered it is, and to give a bit of context, right? Once you have this gene, you have no symptoms whatsoever until probably your 60s or 65. So your brain compensates completely. You have no issues. But when I learned that I had it, my brain or my body starting acting like as if I had Alzheimer's on places I didn't even expect to. So my motor function declined dramatically, meaning even climbing normal stairs. So I have a duplex back in Singapore and it's normal flights of stairs, right? I'll trip on it, consistently tripping on it, which is insane that your motor function would be affected by that. And other random things like putting a piece of clothing when I'm like drying clothes into the wine chiller or that type of things that never happened before right after I learned the diagnosis. So definitely there's a hit on your mental situation where you're thinking, all right, I already have the disease, even though rationally you know you can't possibly have it. So it has a negative effect. That's the reality of things. But then afterwards, you come out of it, right? I don't do that type of things again. Then you have this other type of people who are more feeling, all right, I got this information and now I feel empowered to act. I'll give my own situation. I used to go drinking every Friday or Saturdays with my colleagues, literally blackout drinking consistently. I would not exercise that much. I would eat junk food and so on. I feel now, after learning that I carry this gene, it was such a good catalyst and a power to change that I'm the healthiest I've ever been. I'm the fittest. My brain is the sharpest. And I'm also living life more meaningfully and knowing that this mortality exists. I am focusing more on things that are important and letting go of everything that is not important. So in the end, I like to say that it was the best thing that happened to me that I learned that I carried the gene. I would rather learn as fast as I can and as early as I can to be able to act on it rather than go blind and not have it and get hit by Alzheimer's later on, because that was such a powerful catalyst. And I see it among like all our community members, and there's definitely like a bias because you join the community if you're part of the people who want to act on it. So huge bias there. But for all of them, they resonate with that as well. It was a great thing for them to learn. So the short answer is try to figure out which type of person you are, if you feel motivated by this kind of news or not. If not, like don't get tested because that would be like really bad.
So you mentioned a very interesting thing about how your mind can manifest things once you have some information, and that's pretty crazy because, and I've experienced it myself. We spoke about my challenges when we met up at the health meet, right? So, and it's the same thing. Meaning, if you know that you have some kind of a limitation, your mind starts And I don't know if, and I've tried to analyze it rationally in terms of, is it something like self-preservation that your mind does not allow you to do certain things even though you really want to do it? So it's like you wanna go for a run, and you go to the door, you're getting your gear up, and then your mind makes you just stop at the door. You don't step out of the house and you go back in. Right? So you need a certain kind of resolve to really push through that barrier that your mind creates for you, to really see things on the other side. And it took me a little bit of time to do. I got stuck at that wall for a bit, but then pushed through, thankfully, because it's just, I think, I'm makeup. But you still need to have a certain amount of resolve to get across that, and then really get along to recovery and stuff like that. So I get that, but then uh, if you say that you should know what kind of a person you are, most people don't until they are faced with
Mm.
these challenges.
Yeah,
You know
fair
what I
enough.
mean?
It's true. Yeah,
So
yeah.
so it's tricky, is all I'm trying to say. But it's, I think it's, if the community rallies, and if people see enough examples of others who have beaten it, or who are beating the whole problem, and they're going ahead and progressing in the right direction, then they will get enough motivation to try and, because I think that herd mentality concept works well in this case. If so, what and I'm kind of leading towards what you're trying to do, building the community around the product, and the whole concept, wherein I think that is very important. So how are you actually looking at, how do you see the community growing? Do you have a lot of people who are interested in what specific things you are trying to achieve here?
Yeah, definitely. And I want to go back to what you mentioned, right? Having these type of advocates, you have like people like Chris Hemsworth, who was public about it, that he carries APOE4, Tim Ferriss is as well. Having a lot of these public figures showing that it's not the end of the world and you can actually act on it and you can actually have good results out of that. Means everything, right? Because if you know it's a death sentence and if you feel like your genes equals your destiny, then yeah, of course, like you become like you get into a hole and you don't do anything, right? So the demand for this is having a community of people who are like-minded and who builds on upon each other in terms of momentum and trying new things, sharing articles, sharing wins, but also being supportive when there are lows. I feel like the demand is there because like the space is completely empty. The whole reason why I'm building here is because the space was completely empty. I would have loved to have a solution there and be able to retire in Bali as well. So that's great. I think Alzheimer's and APOE4 specifically is so empty that there's a lot of things to do, which means that everyone who is searching about APOE4 online will eventually find us. The real problem is that a lot of people don't know their status. That's the main hurdle. And it's crazy because it's 25% of the population carries the gene, right?
Worldwide?
Worldwide, yeah.
Okay. Have you done any kind of analysis, or do you have any data on which parts of the world are more impacted, or is it just broad?
Yeah, so you have in terms of ethnicities, there are a few studies. It happens more with like African type of people, except they have less symptoms. So, and the prevalence happens less in Asians, but they have more symptoms. And then Caucasians are kind of in the middle, but on average will be like the whole range will be like 20 to 30% of prevalence.
So uh, there's another take that with aging, brain function any which ways decreases, and you're gonna anyways, you're weakening, your reaction to things is lesser. So how often does it get misunderstood by a lot of people? Because
What do you mean by
elderly, meaning being forgetful is considered okay, it's normal, it's age, you're forgetful. You kind of discount it as growing old. But how many people misunderstand this?
So
Yeah.
yeah, and this is something I have a very strong opinion on, not only on cognition, but also let's say on physical capabilities. I really believe that you age because you stop doing like these harder
Physical
exercise or these
activities.
harder
Yeah.
cognition like tasks rather than the opposite. You're not failing at this task because you are aging. It's the opposite. You are aging because you stop doing those. So I believe it's a lot of mental barriers. What I look at is even like physically, right? You see like people who are 80 years old managing to do ultra marathons and so on. They are
Yeah.
humans. Genetically,
Yeah.
we're the same. Like if they can do that, I can do that too, right? More or less, up to a certain point. And I really believe in that, and I believe cognition is the same thing. So of course, when you start aging, like you don't develop new neurons and so on. Even though there are studies that show that now you have like way more connections and your brain is able to like process like properly. Aging impacts it, but it's mainly, let's say, the moments where you go through, let's say, for women, menopause that affects a lot the brain. And also, once you start retiring, you see that social situations or situations where you use actively your brain starts becoming extremely rare. And that's usually when you start seeing the decline. So I don't
Okay.
believe in the fact that someone who is, let's say, 70 or 80 years old is way less sharp than someone who is like 20 or 30.
It's just mind over matter, pretty much. Okay. So, okay, getting to what you're building. Let's talk about that. Where are you today with um, maybe you can start by talking about what is it that you're actually building.
Yeah, so we're basically building the Phoenix community, and Phoenix is the image of, the mythical bird that learns something, burns down, and then rebirth from the ashes, like more or less like a second life. And we have like several pillars. The first pillar is on the community level, helping people that are on the same journey, that understands each other, that understands what we are going through, be in a space where we can support each other. The second pillar is to validate each intervention that someone is doing, because I always found it insane that a lot of people would take supplements. I don't know if you take supplements or not.
Limited number, but I'm
Yeah,
not too much onto. I don't take supplements that are not uh, clear in terms of what they do for you. So I do my typical deficiency related, vitamin D and B12
yeah.
because of the way lifestyle and food habits, just compensating on that. Other than that, no. I've always avoided popping pills. And this is basically because I think culturally from India we are more focused. We are more driven towards eating a broader diet with different things, a lot of lentils, a lot of veggies and stuff like that. So I think it kind of only thing that you have to compensate for is a lack of meat, maybe, right? Most of the time, but yeah, for me, not as much of supplements.
All right, makes sense. I mean, even if you take like vitamin Ds and so on, you want to validate if it's actually doing something, which in your case, it's easy. You do like blood serum levels of vitamin D, and that is a proxy on how well it's absorbed into your body, right? Because the one
Bloodstream,
thing
yeah.
that there's an assumption here is that whatever level is in your blood, you are absorbing and it's bioavailable to your body at a certain rate. And we're assuming that for you, it's the same as the general population, which is already not completely true, the way that it's bioavailable. But then when you go for things that are also simple, right? Like let's say omega-3s that a lot of people take, you want it for cardiovascular reasons. So in your blood, it's great, but you also want it in your brain. And then you want to validate that it's in your brain. What I'm trying to say here is you really want to know if what you are taking, probably daily and probably for the rest of your life, um, you want to validate that it's doing something. So that's the
Yeah.
second pillar of the Phoenix, validating this through protocols that we show the members. And through these protocols, we explain what you need to test at day 0 before adding this to your supplement stack or lifestyle stack, which can be a mix of blood tests, can be a mix of cognition tests, can be a mix of any qualitative and quantitative information that we have for this specific lifestyle intervention. And then you only change one thing for 3 months. And after 3 months or for whatever the amount of time, you test again and you validate it. And once you validate it, you know with confidence that it's doing something positive or negative. So you know with confidence whether you want to continue doing it or stopping it, because having this confidence helps you being very adherent to the program. What you'll realize very fast in this second pillar is all right, there are probably 40, 50 different interventions that you can do to manage your cognition, manage longevity, and so on. And if you spend 3 months to validate each one of those, it'll take you like decades to go through all that. And no one has time to go through decades. So the
Yeah.
third pillar is to look at community data and all these people who are running these experiments to build what we call like a digital twin, where we have an ability to basically predict if something is likely to work for you or not based on the result of people who are similar to you. What does it mean, people who are similar to you? It's similar genetically, similar in terms of environment, similar in terms of diet, similar in terms of where they live and their activities and so on. And we build these clusters of people who are similar one to another. And we basically look at crowdsourcing those experiments. If something works for this cluster that you are part of, then it's very likely to work for you at a similar dose, because you not only want to know what to do, you also want to know at which dosage, right? Like a very recent thing was like creatine. People take it at 5 grams, but now a lot of people are taking for 20 grams for brain, like cognition benefits, right? So you want to know the dosage as well. And this entire crowdsourced experiments basically builds a lot of data that the more members we have, the more refined and precise we'll be able to do in terms of prediction, as in you come in, you upload your blood tests, your gene, all your different interventions that you did in the past that succeeded. And then we're able to tell you, all right, based on all of that, you have this to try, because it's very likely to succeed for you because people like you had benefits with it. So that's the whole B2C side on the member side. And as we're mentioning early on, that's the, and I want to say plaster, but plaster seems like it's diminishing the result. It will definitely like improve your longevity and like delay whatever cognitive decline that you have by doing a lot of interventions. But then the key part is to help pharma develop those drugs faster. And this entire set of data helps pharma, medtech, biotech de-risk a lot on their clinical trials that they want to do. How do we help them de-risk? Number one is very easy. It's like clinical trial recruitment. A lot of these pharma companies are typically looking at people who are just starting the decline, like slope. And what they realize is they find patients and then they enroll them and they do a battery of tests on them. And let's say they score whatever, 70% on that battery of tests. And they're thinking, all right, 70%, that's the beginning of decline. But that might not be true. The problem is you see a 70%, maybe that person has been at 70% for their entire lives because they were probably not that smart or something, or they had other conditions. Or maybe they have been at 70% for 5 or 6 years. And all of that creates a lot of noise in those clinical trials that basically when you spend like 15 million trying to recruit like 100 or 200 people, when you have like 10 or 20 people that are not potentially there properly, it destroys the results, right? Because your whole thing is not significant anymore and so on. So we help find people, because we have this whole longitudinal data, we can definitely pinpoint the decline because we have all these battery of tests. Then we help like pharma recruit people who are extremely eligible and that are likely to be like super responders and so on for clinical trials. The other thing that we're doing, especially for APOE4s, is to show that a lot of interventions and a lot of our members are doing off-label use of drugs, let's say like microdosing GLP-1, for example. That shows a lot of information for a pharma that wants to run a clinical trial on microdosing GLP-1 for APOE4, because you have an initial set of data, even if it's not super clinically robust, it provides a lot of information to de-risk that initial interest for pharma there. So that's kind of the two different things we do.
Yeah, I just realized how complex it can be for you to actually deliver, the right experience for on the B2C side as well as on the pharma side. It's a tricky problem. So let me start with the B2C side of it, right? So start with the privacy part of it, people wanting to share their own blood work and stuff like that. If and then how can you assure them that even if you're giving them any kind of recommendations on what to do, or what their dosage should be, it has to be rooted in something that's very, very relevant to them, their own journey, right? So my makeup, let's say if I become a member and then I have my profile, ethnicity and age and location is straightforward, okay, that's understood. But then you need to have context in terms of where I was before. So I may be Right now, let's say San Francisco, but before this, maybe 7 years earlier, I was in a different part of the world, right? And then there, my habits were different, influences were different, things like that. You need to contextualize that as well, because it's a journey of, if you're going to map in terms of how my functioning has been overall, that context is very important, isn't it? That is one. My diet and my physicality may have changed over the last 5 or 10 years. That comes into context as well. I may have added medications or reduced medications or changed lifestyle habits altogether. That also comes into play. So what I'm trying to say is there's so many parameters that affect the individual's journey themselves and what happens to them. How does that map to a sample set of people who may be similar, because there are so many variables there as well. So accuracy becomes a big challenge here, right? So, and your risk is, if you're recommending me to take a dosage, ingest something that is going to help me, deal with the possibility of, deterioration in some sort or whatever it is. It's a bit of a gray area in general, right? You need to kind of deliver or convey enough data. I don't know what the right word is, but convey enough so that I have confidence in what you're saying as a user, right? And that becomes a challenge for you.
Totally. So it's a very, very good point. First of all, I want to clarify that we're never recommending someone to do something. What we're trying to do, and that's a regulatory issue, right? What we're trying to do is to give you all the information that is there for you to make the decisions and for you to go see your MD if it's needed to find that specific drug and do it, right? So we are just giving you the information that people that have these similar traits to you have success in a certain way by using it. And now you got the information for you to go explore and to validate that it works for you. What you mentioned is true in terms of your past history, but it doesn't matter as much as what is permanent in you, which are basically your entire genomes, your genes, that's permanent. And then you have your current environment. So hopefully you didn't move like in the past 6 months or 1 year, and your current environment is there. Whatever happens like 10 years in the past will have like very, very, very little impact on like what is useful for you today. In terms of this uh, sense of having enough data to be able to make a decision, you have to put yourself in the shoes of someone who is afraid of getting Alzheimer's and the extent of what they're willing to do today. I'll give you an
Okay.
example of the pain point, right? Because right now we've seen, for example, a lot of studies coming out on lithium, like microdosing lithium on mice models, not even on humans. And you'll see the entire community, not only mine, but in the entire Alzheimer's space, people starting to take microdosing lithium just on
Wow.
my studies. I'm doing it myself as well because a lot of these interventions have very, very low risk in terms of side effects because it's way below whatever is used medically for other conditions. And the positive side can be enormous. So you are taking basically a no risk approach on these type of things. So just to put things into context in terms of the sense of urgency to do something. And I am 35, right? So I still have time. When you think about members who are at 50 or 55, that's really the cap as to what
Right.
you can do in terms of prevention. And then when you're already 60, 70, you're really trying to like prevent the decline. Adding an additional layer of data, an additional layer of information to give you additional confidence is already good enough rather than having 100% certainty that that will help for you specifically. And that's where we're coming from. We're trying to add as much confidence as we can. You'll never be perfect. And that's why we're always asking people to then validate afterwards. Once you start deciding that you want an intervention, then it's your job to validate it on, let's say, your tau tango, your beta amyloid. Those are actual markers of Alzheimer's, to validate that it's like decreasing those markers, for example.
Yeah. No, I
Mm.
get it. Nothing is going to be 100% for sure. I've gone through the route wherein I was on a medication and then that was not working for me. And then I had to go back to my doc and then switch it out. And then we tried something else that worked for the body, things like that. I get it completely. But yeah, interesting to know that the community is open to try out stuff. I definitely don't have the context of being in someone's shoes who's dealing with these markers being available and having the problem. So how big is the community today?
Yeah, so we have like 1,300 people in our newsletter list, and we have 220 paid members, which is
Okay.
a little bit short from the critical amount we need for clinical trials and pharma. I'd say if we manage to be at around 400 on 500, that would be the perfect number, but we're growing like 60% month on month, which means that these numbers will reach them by Q1 like next year, which is when we'll be able to start having those partnerships. Because the key part for us is to really to move pharma into deciding to do clinical trials specifically for APOE4 carriers. What I didn't talk about initially is Alzheimer's cases. 70% of all Alzheimer's cases are from APOE4 carriers and were never put in a specific box in these clinical trials except very recently for very specific compound. And I find that really, really insane that there's not more focus on APOE4, because APOE4 is not just a small gene impacting a small part of your body. It's actually impacting a protein called the APOE transporter that transport cholesterol, fat in your entire body. So that affects a lot of different elements, and it's not a very small gene that impacts a small element. It impacts your entire body. So we should be considered as a separate population compared to the general population. And getting to that 500 type of members, especially in the US, is way more than enough to have clinical trials, even just on our community, and do the recruitment. Because the main pain point now for pharma is to find the people.
Okay. Are there any other ailments that you test for that also depend on, because you mentioned that this is a carrier for multiple things, including cholesterol within your body, the protein. So does this come up in any other ailment associated tests?
Not really, because you wouldn't be specific enough. Let's say you have high cholesterol, it could be a lot of things, right? It could be familial hypercholesterolemia. It could be a lot of different, either even genetic or even non-genetic. So it wouldn't be specific. But if you have Alzheimer cases in your family, that would be a very strong signal that you potentially carry the gene. Because as you know, like you get the genes from your parents and so on, right? So if it's 70% of all the cases, very likely that if you get Alzheimer's, several cases of Alzheimer's in your family, then that you carry the gene. So that will be the only way. What we've seen is some governments, especially like, for example, Singapore, have started pushing for genetic testing for familial hypercholesterolemia. When they see that someone has high cholesterol, they'll push for the genetic testing, because then you can act specifically on it. And I'm trying to be an advocate to put APOE4 in the same category. So I believe we're starting to get there, to start seeing interest, especially when the payer, which in the US, unfortunately, is like insurance and tons of different insurance. But in other countries, when the payer is a single entity, the switch to prevention and trying to detect these illnesses or predisposition early makes a lot of sense for public health in terms of budget.
Yeah.
Right? So we're seeing the move there.
So do you also see that in Asia, we have much more of a prevention focused mindset, but in the West, it is more of a reactionary mindset, more or less. Right. So, do you see that as a key difference in both sides of the world and how they approach, these things?
I'd say between the West and the East, I wouldn't lump all the West together. Like being, like doctor of pharmacy from France, I'd say in France you have way more push on the prevention aspect compared to the US. I think the US is like very, very, very special in terms of
Reactionary.
healthcare.
Yeah.
Interesting
Yeah.
healthcare system here. But I think it's on the individual's responsibility, right? Because if you put yourself in the shoes of the payer, they want to first put whatever limited budget they have into helping people who cannot work anymore go back to work, which is the whole curative moment. Because someone who cannot work, then it becomes a burden on society. They don't pay taxes and so on, right? So those are the most critical people to heal, or to at least bring them back to a state where they can work and work longer and contribute to society, which makes sense when you have limited budget. But then that is on optimizing the whole society welfare and healthcare. But any person wants to optimize first their own health. And that's when there's a disconnect between, do you let your own fate handled by governments or single entity or multiple entities, or you decide yourself that prevention is very important, because then the decision becomes very different. You want to do a lot of battery of tests. You will spend additional money there that the government would never do, because you very unlikely that you find something, but you as an individual want to maximize that. So I believe it's the responsibility of the individual to take their own health into their own hands.
Yeah. So the other thing is, most people, when they're younger, they're not thinking about it. We started with this whole conversation there, right? Unless you face, unless you're you're nerding out on the data, then you'll kind of discover things. But how do you convince the younger generation to kind of look at this and go and get this? So the two ways I'm thinking about it is, unless they realize, you make them realize that it is a serious problem and that they are more susceptible to this because of the percentages out there. The second thing is, you make it easy for them to test. When they can just decide, okay, this is a test I need to do, like, just to make sure that I've got all my markers in place, and you do a test. It's easy in a place like Silicon Valley because everyone's talking about it, and everyone's obsessing about being better, more healthy, and stuff like that, right? When you look at it. But speaking broadly across everywhere else in the world, it's tricky unless you have easy access to testing, or make it like, um, yeah, basically that. Yeah, make it easy to test and make it relevant enough so that you go down that.
Yeah, or have additional incentive to test as well, right? For example, 23andMe and all the others, they played a lot on the ancestry and having additional benefits other than just health, like additional like cool
Mm,
things that you can do. It's a good thing to offer, like in Christmas, to see like whatever type of ancestors you have, wherever they were in
yeah.
the whole world and so on. So you have these type of additional benefits that are
Mm,
there, that are just informational, right? You get the
right.
insights, and that's it. You can't act on it. But yeah, definitely making it easy. I mean, right now a genetic test is extremely easy. Like even a whole genome sequencing is 200, 300 US dollar. You receive it at your home, you do a swab, you send it back. It's not painful whatsoever, and then
Yeah.
extremely fast. And even if you do only snippets or not the entire genome, it will cost you maybe $100, right? And that's probably the price around the world as well when
Okay.
you do that once.
Okay.
So I'd say the hurdle to get tested is not really there. It's mainly what is the incentive of doing that. I remember when I was in my 20s or even early 30s, I would not even care about insurance. I would feel that I'm like invulnerable, right? So you don't really care
Yeah.
about health. You don't do your screening
Correct.
unless they're completely free and given by your employer, and you even get one day of holiday to do that. So, okay, you'll do that. But yeah, definitely you feel that you are immortal. So you have like specific moments in your life where you start realizing that. Those moments are usually when you start seeing someone close to you dying, or someone getting seriously
Mm,
sick, like a cancer diagnosis, whether it's a friend, family member, and so on. That those are the trigger moments where you realize like your own mortality. And that's when you start caring a little bit more on health, because in your 20s you are invulnerable. You can do whatever you want. You can go like drinking the entire night and still be able to perform the whole next day without sleeping,
yeah.
right?
You're invincible, right? At
Yeah,
that age. So the other thing is, you are, so even at an early age, even if you come across um, examples of people struggling and stuff, there is a subconscious level of denial that happens in your mind, right? Meaning, you just, you see it, it doesn't register the same way as it would once you're of a certain age. Just because you're young, and you're like, your brain prioritizes things very differently at that time,
yeah, for sure.
right?
I mean, those are, I don't know if it's an age thing, but you have those 5 stages of mourning that exist, right? And denial
Yeah,
is
yeah,
definitely one of them. But you know, when people think, okay, cancer, it only happens to other people. Like I don't think anyone thinks that it happens to them, but then yeah, it effectively
yeah.
happens, right? It's
Correct,
yeah,
correct.
for example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So coming back to the community, and you said that, okay, you're dealing with a certain number of users on newsletters. Um, so how are you pushing out and reaching out to people
Yeah,
today?
so I believe there are lakes of people that exist, and those lakes are on YouTube, Instagram to a certain extent, on Facebook groups, on Reddit, and those are where I am extremely, extremely active. The goal is really that anyone who searches the term APOE4, which is a very activated term, I'll be there, whether it's like on Google, on ChatGPT, on these like social medias. Uh, but I believe that's not enough. So I'm starting to have like different campaigns doing with a few genetic testing companies where I'm basically sharing my stories that learning that I carry the gene is the best thing that happened in my life. And that creates the incentives of people to test. And then we capture 25% of the people because 25% will carry the gene. The other growth lever to be able to push that as well with healthcare providers. So there've been extremely, extremely positive results from neurologists and actual researchers, so the medical healthcare providers and so on pushing people to test when their parents have Alzheimer's. So I'd say those are the two big levers that we have.
Okay. So we will list out these resources for anybody who's listening in, so that you can they can kind of discover your communities, and even kind of reach out to you directly as well, so that we can help more people out there for sure. And encourage people to get tested. I think it's super important that, especially if you have anybody in the family, even, and it's not just immediate family, right? It could be a cousin or a relative or whoever anybody has got in the entire gene pool. um you're kind of susceptible any which ways, right?
I mean, higher likelihood if it's your parents or your grandparents, but yeah, a
Hmm.
cousin would also work, but then the likelihood is lower. But I also want to emphasize that it's not only about APOE4, right? You want to see like if you have any cancer biomarkers, if you have like any other rare diseases. So it's really worth it to do just the overall screening because your risk of getting one specific let's say, negative news is very low, but the accumulation of everything, it becomes like significant, right? So, and you want to know for the big major part of the world, I think, of the people, you actually want to know that you have the thing and then just do whatever you can to prevent it.
Right. Okay. So community is one thing. Second is the product, right? You have a product that is behind it. And then, so how does that work? Once, let's say, I discover the community, I do a test and figure out I have, the that particular gene. Then what happens?
Then you log on to our apps and you basically log in everything that you have done before. So we're trying to have the retrospective view on whatever you did. So upload all your blood tests and so on. Very soon we'll have a partnership where we'll be able to access all your patient data, which will make it way easier. And then the key for you is to be able to provide the flavor between blood test A and blood test B, especially when there was a change. Let's say you dropped your cholesterol significantly between two blood tests. We want to know what you changed here, and hopefully you remember. So having these insights are very important. And then from the moment where you are onboarded, we have all the retrospective data. Then after that, you log in, whether you have daily things, weekly things, and monthly things that you log in to be able to have the real time change of what you're doing. So then we'll look at all your supplements, all your lifestyle interventions. You'll receive insights on if you have these 10 supplements that are working for you, then maybe you should try this 11th one, on brands of supplements that you should try, and so on. And then we capture all this data today to be able to analyze it later. Because to be able to build those digital twins, we would need like more than a few thousand members where we are not there yet. But at least we capture the data in real time because that's more valuable than trying to remember what happened like 2 or 3 or even 10 years before.
Okay, so I, as a user, I'm giving you, let's say I give you three blood tests over a
Yeah.
period of, let's say, 3 quarters. Every quarter I do a blood test. And then you can see the variation in my markers, what are my readings are. But what do I, as a user, end up getting? Meaning, you have already given me the lifestyle overview. You've given me a laundry list of things I need to kind of take care of. I'm taking care of all that. And progressively, after the end of the, let's say we are at the end of the year, what do I get? Because I've taken your input from the start of the program, and I've made, and because I'm obsessing over making sure I'm living, healthy and stuff like that. I'm set on my goal there. So how do I look at it at the end of that
Yeah.
year?
So not only at the end of the year, what you'll have at your last blood test is basically all the optimal values for an APOE4 carrier, because that is extremely important to not base what you're doing on average value or optimal value for the general population, because as an APOE4 carrier is very different. So you get the insight on the biomarkers that are out of range, and then the interventions that can be used to put these back into range, whether it's like lower and higher or lower. And at that point in time, then we start the whole experiment process, which is what you should test at day 0, what you should change, what you should test at month 3. So it's not end of the year thing. Think of it as a cycle of every 3 months. You want to test something, validate it. If it works, put it on your stack, then you keep it forever, and then you continue validating something else. And that's usually how our members will go through. Yeah.
Got it. So the typical life cycle is once you onboard a person, then they are continuously using this application to ensure that their markers are always in the right range and they stay the course, basically. Meaning, and the course is meaning they stay healthy throughout, forever,
Yeah,
in a
but
way.
they would be healthy to begin with. They wouldn't have any
Correct.
symptoms.
No, when I mean healthy,
Yeah,
I'm saying optimal markers. That's
yeah.
what I mean by this.
I mean, you'll
Right.
realize that having optimal markers is a very long process, especially for
Yeah,
cholesterol,
yeah,
like ApoB and so on. But you will also want to do the more, once you are optimizing the main baseline, you want to do the more edgy stuff that are more targeted for, let's say, beta amyloid accumulation and so
yeah,
on. So then
yeah.
you'll usually like see more studies coming every few months. So you'll always have like new things to try if you want to. I also want to emphasize that it's not about only obsessing about it. We have a lot of members who don't want to only think about Alzheimer's their entire lives, right? Because that defeats the purpose. You don't want to focus so much on preventing Alzheimer's that you don't even enjoy your life. So there is a good balance to try to strike in between. And I think it's really key to be able to find your own preferences, right? For some people, it might be extremely easy to try to run like 30K every week. For some other people, to go fasting for a few days and so on. So it's like helping you find whatever benefits you have versus if you put it on a like 2x2 matrix, which is the impact of something versus the effort needed on the other side. And you really want to have the lower effort, higher impact thing, and we help you build this matrix of interventions.
Yeah, I was coming to that itself, meaning uh, for people who are obsessing over data, it's a great thing, but for others, it's not that interesting, or they don't want the overhead of having to deal with too many things, right? So how do you make sure that it is something people try out, but then they're not thinking of it as a problem?
Yeah.
It should be like an add-on to their lifestyle. It should not hamper their lifestyle. That's a key
Yeah,
thing,
for
right?
sure, for sure.
So yeah,
So
because
usually,
nobody.
if we go back to that 2x2 matrix, you have the effort. The effort, you probably more or less know how much effort it is for you to, let's say, forego completely like red meat or only eat like keto diet or running and so on. What you don't know is the impact of that. So you want to try it out because you might want to do something that is very high effort and pick 1 or 2 of these very high effort thing because that burns your discipline, and then only do low effort thing. But you want to absolutely try to see whatever impact you have for each of these interventions, and you have no idea what it is today. Like for just to give you a concrete example, some people are hyper absorber of cholesterol, some people are hyper producer, which means that for the people who are hyper absorber, having diet changes will have much bigger impact than the other type. And the only way to know is like try to change your diet, see the impact. If it doesn't even change anything, then yeah, keep eating whatever you're eating because it doesn't impact anything. It doesn't make sense to try to sacrifice that, right? So you want to have this
Yeah.
entire protocol that is very structured in a way that you have confidence in whatever you are doing, that you are doing the right thing, and that it's not wasted effort, because everyone only has this amount of discipline possible, right? So you don't want to waste it on things that are not moving the needle.
So, how much of misconceptions are there associated with Alzheimer's?
Which is in terms of misconceptions about brain health, Alzheimer's, and so on, what exists like today.
Yeah. So, my point is this:
Yeah.
when it comes to, let's say, something as simple as cholesterol, not simple, but like cholesterol, there is a misconception that cholesterol is in the food that you eat. Rather, people don't understand it's a body that produces cholesterol, right? There itself, there's a misconception, which is they look at the food labels and say, oh, this has got so much cholesterol, I should not eat it. But it's not in the food, it's in your body is producing it based on what you're eating. correct?
Totally.
So
Yeah. I mean, you want to look at saturated fat in that sense. But yeah,
yeah, yeah,
people
yeah,
who say like
exactly.
eggs, you have tons of cholesterol, but your cholesterol doesn't go from the egg directly in your blood. It's,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
so what I'm trying to say is, similarly, do you have any typical misconceptions about Alzheimer's?
Okay. It's a good question. I think and I can only base it on the few because people usually don't approach a topic of Alzheimer's that it
I
doesn't
know,
come up
I
in
know.
like general conversation. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I don't think I have a big idea of the general population, but I can see it among like my friends and so on. Like um I think the perception, and I think it's because in the media the perception of Alzheimer's is it's okay, but the reality is way worse because you're linking it with dementia, with losing your memories and so on. And I've seen patients literally getting into anger states where they were like throwing their own feces at their family members out of no reasons. And that extreme type of reactions, I don't believe like people really understands how horrible it can be. I think so. The
yeah.
misconception
Okay.
of having like in the notebook where it's okay, you phase in and phase out, you just lose your memory, and it's kind of cute because you forgot this or forgot that. That's not the reality because it's linked to dementia, which means like your entire personality changes, and it can be someone completely different.
Yeah. Okay. So getting back to the product again now, I think we this is a broad based topic. It's super interesting in terms of I see multiple challenges that you have to kind of A, build the right product, B, put it out in front of the right, get the right people onboarded, and then of course drive the right partnerships to make sure that you have the right partners with the same goal, right, for the community as a whole. Because we have, and this is like just quickly touching upon the thing you asked me about the amount of supplements. One of the things that I avoid supplements for is I see a lot of supplements out here on the market shelves, right? It's like too much. Everybody is now trying to sell, curcumin extract supplements, and vitamin D. You have like hundreds of them, and you have everyone suddenly is on the creatine diet and all kinds of stuff. So it's like overwhelming for the average consumer. And plus, when you're dealing with this kind of a news wherein you have to kind of course correct because you have certain genetic markers that are off, that becomes super overwhelming for that particular user. So it is very important for you to say, hey, we get you. We know what it is. This is not a marketing ploy. This is really based on what probably is a good thing for you to undertake, right? How do you convince people to really understand that?
So luckily, the people who join the community, they tend to do their own research and they tend to look at the study papers, right? Or at least the abstract of the study paper. Now that comes with
Okay.
a lot of challenges because like, if you're not scientifically trained, you don't necessarily see the huge gap there is on mice models versus human models. And you don't necessarily see the issues when a clinical trial or a paper is not designed properly and has tons of confounding factors and so on. So that comes with another set of issues. But I'd say the interest to find things is relatively high, no matter what, and to do things that are like really no regrets, meaning if there are no side effects, like why not try it because you can't. It hurts what your wallet. That's it. So that's usually where we're there. The convincing is not the hard part, I'd say. People are more eager to try as many things as they can, but then the problem comes that they can't isolate if it's working or not because they're taking like, and that was my case as well, right? I started with 20 supplements straight out of the door once I detected it, and it's like, okay, how do I know now? Which is like trying to push people to be more patient, and validating them one by one has been more of a challenge than convincing them to try new things, actually.
Yeah, that's what I thought so, because everybody's rushing to get a silver bullet kind of a solution, and that doesn't exist. And you need to be patient. I think patience is a key thing. But patience, you to temper that mindset, you need to really give them confidence that you know what you're saying, and that you have enough of people who are working on the problem from their side and not from a seller side or a farmer side, because that's where it comes from. Pharma companies, the mindset, you need to make sure that you're the bridge between users and people who are building solutions for those users, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the alignment of interest, right? So one decision that we made very early on is to not try to maximize profit, as in we'll never take sponsorships. So never any affiliate links, never sponsorships from any companies whatsoever, which helps the member understand that whatever we're suggesting there is no random incentives like to push for, like things that happens a lot in podcasts like AG1 or all these like different supplements because they get tons of referrals money out of that, right? So having this
Okay.
very strong stance of no sponsorship, unbiased advice, unbiased type of information that is sharing is very important for us. And I think that's a key pillar of the community.
Okay. So where are you with the product right now? Meaning what level of completion or what level of features are currently available for users?
Yeah, it's still very, very early. So
Okay.
we have all the insights on the supplements, like all the part about logging in information is there because that's the most critical part to be able to log in on real time. What we don't have yet, and that's a factor of both a technical challenge and a critical number of patients, of members, is the entire insights about like digital twins and be able to predict what is likely to work for you. This is not there yet, but everything else, whether it's the community platform, getting access to experts, being able to do Q&A, having pods, accountability pods, which means like matching people who are more or less similar to you in terms of their goals and so on, to be able to have this close, neat tight of people, like 2 or 4 people that's there as well, logging in your blood tests, your supplements, all of that is there. In terms of partnerships with pharma and medtech, we're very lucky that we have basically not only a movement, we have an army of people who are willing to do things. And we realize very fast that all our members are willing to do a little bit, not much, but a little bit to help the cause. And that could be just sending an email to a pharma company. And we managed to unlock like big pharma partnerships because they received like 40 or 50 emails from our members, different emails that said, hey, you should talk to Kevin because we need your med now. And then we started those discussions that way. So we have an actual study with like red light therapy. So this is like a helmet I have next to me. That basically is helping for your mitochondria in your brain. It goes through the skull and it helps you for cognition and so on. So we have these studies that already exist. The enrollment is insane. Out of 220 people, we had 75 people enrolling in those studies. So it's like moving very fast. I'd say on the B2B side, it's relatively easy to find those partnerships because again, we just have our army, like email people. The main challenge we have today is to find more APOE4 carriers because that's the critical part.
Which brings you back to the testing cycle wherein you need people to
Yeah.
test.
Yeah.
And then how easy is it to sign up for a test and how easy is it to discover a test? Do you kind of promote a particular test with a healthcare provider?
We don't do that. We have several partners where we have like
Okay.
discount codes with them. And
Okay.
again, we don't take any fee out of that. So we ask them to pass on any affiliate fee directly as a higher discount to the buyer.
Okay.
I'm actually currently exploring with a few companies if we could not sell our own test at cost or even subsidize cost. And it can be as low as hopefully 60 to 70 US dollar. And if we subsidize it, let's say half the price, then it could be even as low as 35, all included test. And we're considering doing that to be able to expand it further. But also like in the middle of fundraising to be able to do this type of big campaigns and
Yeah.
spread it. Yeah.
Well, that's the founder's journey, man, because you'll have to
Yeah.
juggle multiple balls up in the air. Fundraising is gonna happen, product is gonna happen, community is gonna
Yeah.
happen. So yeah, that's the jam pretty much. Okay. Um, so apart from the challenge of onboarding users, and so you're raising monies as well, right? How much are you looking to raise right now?
Yeah, so we're actually only raising from our community members or APOE4 carriers,
Okay.
like a small round of 500K. We have
Okay.
250 hard committed and 75 like soft committed. So we're almost there. I'd say the hardest part is the first 50%. So we're past that. So that's
Okay.
good. But the plan is also to go as fast as we can. Right? So I had to ponder a lot whether I wanted to go the VC route or not. But then I thought, all right, if I'm already sacrificing my health span, then I want the acceleration to be as fast as I can. And so now that I'm in SF, the whole plan is to build the connections with those VCs to raise maybe in 1 year a proper seed round of several millions to be able to grow really as fast as we can. Yeah.
Okay. And how big is your team?
So it was only me initially. So completely solopreneur. And that's why I hesitated between the two. Now we have two engineers that are actually community members that were happy enough to volunteer their time. And once we finish this fundraise, we'll see if we can bring them on either full time, give them a piece of equity and so on. And then have someone helping me on YouTube videos. But that's it. But I'm currently hiring for someone in growth to help find more APOE4 carriers and partnerships, and a software engineer like full time.
Okay. So when you look at reaching out to more APOE for carriers, it's not a general marketing, you know, strategy, right? You have to look at focus groups and stuff like that, or are you thinking of, oh, let's just reach out to everybody out there and see who comes up?
No, I'd say the main source will be to have these partnerships with the gene testing companies because they have this database of APOE4 carriers. And even if they can't give us their email, they can share with them like, hey, you have APOE4, this is a committee for APOE4 carriers. So that's a very easy thing because like these gene testing company, they're kind of like not doing anything after they give that type of diagnosis. The second layer is not to sell those tests or like subsidized tests to everyone. The main target will be the people with Alzheimer's in their family, because then so those will be already like a lot of people, and we'll start with that.
You're currently chasing those partnerships with those gene testing companies?
If any one of like your listener is in SF, is in building in the space, whether it's the neuro space or even diagnostics, because diagnostics for us is very important in terms of trying to find innovative ways of tracking cognitive decline or the lack of cognitive decline or cognitive improvement. There are tons of startups that are working there. So if you're working in that space, very, very happy to chat. If you are working in bringing pharmaceuticals or medtech devices, even if you are preclinical, it's always good to start the relationship now for when you need patients to test or to do clinical trials, then we'll be there. And by that time, we'll have like thousands plus of members, so it'll be great. So definitely like reach out if you're working in the space. And overall, I would love to meet more entrepreneurs, even outside of the space, because the reason why I'm in SF and considering moving here is because I love the energy. I love the fact that people are dreaming very big and people are playing to win versus playing to not lose, which is the case in other parts of the world. So I want to be immersed in the momentum. So if you're in SF and building something, like, it would be great to meet.
Superb.
The one,
Yeah.
amazing, cool.
So when it comes to users adopting or being part of the community, privacy is at the top of one's mind because it's your own health data and stuff. So how are you dealing with?
Yeah, it's actually a very, very important point that we take it very seriously, especially because a lot of our members are actually public figures. They can be politicians, they can be actually musicians and so on. And they are even using pseudonyms because this APOE4 status is actually something that is very, very sensitive for a lot of them. And even though it should not impact the public perception, unfortunately still does. And let's say a politician might be afraid that their constituents might think that they are not able to do their job because they have this gene, right? So we're at this like stage where privacy is extremely important. So we are like, of course, like HIPAA compliant, we take care of making sure that we have separate databases in terms of separating the actual names and the actual patient files, or even if we got a breach, something we need to get breached twice to be able to recoup the information. So we take that extremely seriously because it's one of the main thing of the community that people want, or at least a big part of the community want to keep that like secret that they carry the gene. It is something that I'm trying to work on, that it shouldn't have that huge stigma that you carry the gene. And I'm being very public about mine. A lot of people are being public about theirs. But in the meantime, having this privacy is important.
Okay. So I was thinking of something else as well. Is there any kind of data on the success rate or not success rate really, the percentage of improvement, people who've seen improvements after changing lifestyle post discovery of this gene?
Yeah. So I'd say the most important metrics that we have is we have a 94% people are sticking with us. So retention rate, and that means they are seeing results. And overall, it's very hard to attribute whether it's because they joined the community, whether they got a boost in motivation and so on. But we are seeing the blood test difference and so on. And for the major type of metrics, let's say ApoB or inflammatory markers, on average, let's say ApoB, we're seeing a 25 or 26% reduction across our members, the ones that are trying to act on it, right? So we're seeing results. Now, is it because they were already motivated before and now they have this additional push on us? It's very hard to attribute, but definitely it's like we see a lot of progress there.
Do you see a future where you will integrate with all of these health and fitness apps and trackers that people are already tracking their regular physical metrics and stuff?
Oh, 100%. Because yeah, logging in manually things is terrible. No one likes to do that. We are developing an app, and as soon as we have the app interface and everything ready, then we'll be able to log in to integrate with everything, whether it's like Apple or Oura Ring or Garmin or even Samsung Health and everything. So we'll be able to pull that information, because having information on your sleep, on your resting heart rate, and having all these very metric that are objectives is very important, right? On top of whatever is like qualitative. So that's in our pipeline, and hopefully by Q1 next year.
Okay. So this is going to be an app that syncs with all your existing devices.
Yeah. So
Okay.
the overall goal is always to have flavor between your tests, right? Like let's say blood test A, blood test B, we see how your resting heart rate moved, how your sleep moved, and then we add an additional information about how you were taking these supplements, you were doing meditation, we're doing all that. So we get the whole 360 views, because that's when we can leverage that data to be able to do something out of it.
Okay. So it's a reverse plug, meaning you're pulling data from those environments into your system, into your app.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus everything that we can gather. Yeah.
Kevin, it's been a pleasure having you on today. Wishing you all the very best with Phoenix community. I hope the app and the whole community reaches great heights and delivers serious value to a lot of people out there who are dealing with discovering that they have the Alzheimer's gene. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sanjeev. It was a pleasure having this discussion with you. Thank you for having me.